On the island of Newfoundland, upon the southwest coast, lies the little town of Burgeo, to whom I'll sing this toast. There are so many highlands that lie just off her shore, and when the cold north wind blows, you can hear the billows roar. The people from the village make their living from the sea. They like their independence, it shows that they are free. Some fish in their small boats in the wind, the rain and sleet, while others make their living on the offshore trawler fleet. They've known their share of tragedies down through the years, and when the memories overcome, they show their grief with tears. For they have lost some loved ones to the furies of the seas, for heartaches and heartbreaks are locked in memories. This village, it's got beauty carved on its rugged shore. 7 miles of pure white sand, who could ask for more? The mountains and the valleys where the rivers run so fast, and the salmon rise to the sportsman's fly as he makes another cast. Now the people of this village love their native home, for anyone who goes away most surely will return. Just like that lifelong mystery, the answer you won't know. What makes this rugged village burn so deeply in your soul? What makes this rugged village burn so deeply in your soul?
Good evening, and welcome to This Week in Review. Tonight in our stories we have MV Marine Voyager back in operation, our MHA Calvin Parsons. Please stay tuned for these stories and more after this. Try your luck and play TV bingo sponsored by the cadets. Cards are 6 for $5 and can be bought from any member of the cadets or in most stores around town. The Marine Voyager came back on Friday. She was on refit for approximately 3.5 months, getting a new bottom put onto her. During her time off, she was replaced by the Challenge 1 until she became unsuitable. She was then replaced by the Marine Eagle. The residents of Francois and Grey River found the Marine Eagle to be such an inconvenience because she could only take 12 passengers, 6 from Francois and 6 from Grey River, and you had to make your reservations first. There was nowhere to store luggage, freight, or pets. Now that the Marine Voyager is back, the residents of these places are very relieved and are glad to see her back. Our MHA Calvin Parsons came by the studio for an update. Tonight in our studios we have our MHA Calvin Parsons. Good evening.
Nice to be here.
Yes, what brings you back down to Burgeo?
Well, doing the clinic again, of course. We had a Easter break. The House of Assembly has been closed for the last couple of weeks, so I took the opportunity to do another clinic, and I came down and did Grey River and Ramia and Burgeo, and ran into a bit of foul weather and some boat problems, so stayed 3 days longer than I anticipated, but anyway, we managed to get the work done that we needed to get done. And the house will be open now for April and May again, and it'll probably be the last time I'll get an opportunity to do a clinic, certainly down in Grey River and Ramie at least. So I thought this was a good opportunity to do it now. So that's what's happening on the clinic situation. Just a few items, if I could, that I would give you an update on. First of all, the cell phone coverage on the Burgeo Road area. That's been an issue for quite some time. I have a meeting scheduled with a Trevor McLeod, who is he's the cell phone manager with Alliant, and I'm due to meet with him in St. John's on April the 23rd.
Okay.
So when we next meet, I'll certainly be able to provide you with an update as to what came out of that meeting with him on the cell phone issue. On the transportation and the roads budgets, I've been advised by the Minister of Transportation, Diane Whalen, that this district of Burgeo-Lapoil will receive $2 million in road work for this year, 2008. And so far, where that's going to go, the breakout on it is approximately $500,000 of that $2 million will go to put a new top on a road, on a bridge in Alamort. That has been the $1 priority now for at least the last 2 years. So that will finally be replaced. Of the remaining $1.5 million, over $1 million of it will go into the Burgeo Road. Now, I don't know if I'm Cyril McCarthy yet, who's the highways guy, exactly what they're going to do with that money. I suspect they'll be putting it into the end of the road towards the Trans-Canada, because that's the one that's in the worst shape. I came down over it there recently, Monday, and there's no doubt that road needs a lot of work. And this, of course, is only considered, even by him, Cyril McCarthy, to be a minor investment as to what's needed in the Burgeo Road. He's looking at putting in possibly $1 million or $2 million each year for the next 2 or 3 years at least, in order to bring that road up to scratch. Because we've had several washouts, there's lots of ruts in the road, it's in terrible condition. But at least they put in now at over $1 million that'll go into that road this year. Another issue, of course, was hot and heavy in the House of Assembly and in the media for a while, was the turbot quota. Just to give people an update there, we didn't know, or I certainly wasn't aware of, the Bill Barry deal that he did back in '91 on the plant here when he took it over from NetC. He had a quota for 1,650 tons of turbot, which was actually being fished up off Nunavut. And anyway, we all know the history on Barry. Besides closing the plant, he transferred his redfish quotas to cancel. And meanwhile, he had this turbot quota, which I'm assuming over the years he's given out or rented out or sold to someone to make money off of this quota. But anyway, we became aware of the fact that this turbot quota that Bill Barry had, he has now sold that to Clearwater, who's John Risley, of course, the Nova Scotian company. And that was very upsetting because, number one, we weren't personally aware that the turbot quota existed. If it did exist, it was part of the original Burgeo deal and should be down here and benefit the people in Burgeo. And most shocking of all is that the federal fishery minister, Loyola Hearn, allowed this transfer to take place and allowed Barry to sell it to Risley, to Clearwater. So we raised a question in the House of Assembly because I didn't know what role, if any, the provincial government might have played in this. But Tom Rideout, the provincial minister of fisheries, confirmed that yes, he was aware of it, yes, they were opposed to the transfer, and he himself agreed that, you know, if there's a quota, it should have stayed here in Burgeo and should not have been given to Bill Barry should not have been allowed to sell it to Risley. Now, all that Loyola Hearn has said in response so far, because I've written to him as well to say, why did you allow this to happen, We're all, that's been the issue here. We're trying to get some kind of resource for the last 15 years. And why did you allow this to happen? And so far he said, well, it's a transaction between two private companies and we don't interfere. But, I mean, that's just not good enough. The quota is not Bill Barry's quota. It's a Canadian quota. He's allowed to have it by the federal government, yes, but there should be some terms and conditions put on it. And it was done for Burgeo, should have stayed in Burgeo. So that issue is not over with Hearn. We'll be pursuing that one again with him, because that definitely should not have happened, and there ought to be some redress given for that particular reason. Sure, George Reed, the mayor, is part of a Southwest Community Council group, including, for example, Peter Fenwick out of Port-au-Port. And it was only 4 months ago that they met with Tom Rideout in St. John's looking for quota. And Rideout said at that time, if we can find a quota, fine, we'll support Burgeo and help Burgeo to get it, the same as we did in Arnold's Cove last year, a couple of years ago. So, and then we find out this kind of stuff is happening behind the scenes, and with Loyola Hearn's approval and blessing, and that's just not good enough. So that issue needs to be pursued. The brush cutting is a continuing issue. As you know, we had 70, 80 kilometers approved last year, and the guy did a fairly good job. I was impressed from the Trans-Canada Highway down what he did. He certainly did cut back from the sidelines of the road. It took him longer to do it than we anticipated, and there might have been a little bit of play with words here, because I was told that we were going to have 70 kilometers of cutting. So I just assumed, probably naively, that it would have been 70 kilometers down the road from the Trans-Canada. You go down 70 kilometers. But actually, when you size it up, it looks to me like it was 35 kilometers on one side and 35 kilometers on the other side. So, and that's the case. He's gone a fair distance, but there still needs a bit of work done there. So I'm back at Cyril again, Cyril McCarthy, the supervisor, and asking for another contract so that we can finish the job that needs to be done on the brush cutting. The terminal building is pretty well complete here in Burgeo. I understand actually Monday, April the 7th, which is this coming Monday, the officials from Work Services will be in town. They're going to be looking at the building. I understand it's pretty well complete. They might need a little bit of landscaping type work done outside, but I understand the building itself is complete. There will be a public tendering very soon, I understand, from Walter Pumphrey, who's looking after the building in terms of Work Services. He's the guy responsible. There will be a public tender called for somebody to look after the building, as well as provide the wharfinger services for the ferry service. So that public tender should be hitting publicly very soon. That'll be announced, I would think, through your council here and so on.
Is that going to be 2 jobs or 1?
I think it's going to be in one. They're putting it in the same tender rather than have somebody do the custodial and cleaning and somebody do the wharfinger. I think it's actually going to be, they put it out to one person. Now, whoever the successful bidder is, and if they get the contract, I guess it's up to them how they want to split it. If they want to hire 2 people to do it, that's up to them. But I suspect from talking to Walter Pumphrey, what will happen is they want one contract with a person. Now, if that person splits up the contract after the fact, that's between that person and their employees. So that should be coming down very soon. There's been ongoing ferry issues. I just experienced firsthand this week. Like I say, I've been down on the coast now for 5 days, stormbound in Ramia for 3 days. Beautiful place, but it's bad to be stuck when you got work to get done, and you only got a limited time to do it. So I did get Grey River done. The Eagle, the Marine Eagle, was replacing the Courier. The Courier, I believe. I might be mistaken here. I just came across on her actually. The Voyager, excuse me. The Voyager was normally on the route from here to Grey River to Francois. She was on refit, replaced by the Eagle. Anyway, the Eagle, as of now, has gone up to the other end of the coast to look after Grand Brit and Le Poyle and Rose Blanche, so that the coaster can go to refit. The Voyager is now back, but unfortunately the Gallipoli is down, and the Gallipoli has got serious motor problems. And as of this taping right now, she's still not repaired, and I think they anticipate there's going to be a few more days yet before she does get repaired. On healthcare issues, there's no question that that's an ongoing issue. fortunate in Burgeo in the sense that you have some stability amongst your nursing staff here. Not so fortunate when it comes to the other areas like Ramia, for example. There's been ongoing problems keeping proper staff in the clinic there. We've had meetings. The lady from here, Ms. Porter, has been over to Ramia with us. We held meetings over there with their Health Services Committee, trying to get some stability back in the system, because you also have the issue of coastal clinics, whether it's Grand Brit or Grey River. You had to make sure that they're done. Now, people understand if weather is an issue and you can't get in, people understand that, and people are very reasonable in that regard. But if the weather's okay and the choppers are available, but you don't have staff to go, that causes a big problem. So we've had meetings with the respective health committees in the various communities, and hopefully we can get some resolution there. But I'd like to say thanks to the people here, Ms. Porter, particularly at Burgeo. We've had some severe issues, and I must say she's been on the ball. She's been very helpful, and anytime there is a problem, she's more than willing to try to help out and accommodate so that nobody is disadvantaged because of the situation. But healthcare, of course, as anyone who's aware of the provincial situation, retaining and attracting and retaining professionals, particularly nurses and so on, has become very difficult. And I think the government has, of course, got to look at it and make sure that there are proper incentives put in place so that we can keep these necessary professionals in the future. The other thing is regarding the Burgeo specifically, the number one priority now, I guess, given that the water thing has been resolved and the commitments have been made by the federal and the provincial governments and the town to replace the water system, and that's going to be done. The number one priority now would be the freezing unit, the ecosystem, the eco freezer for the rink. Okay. That application has been submitted. Council submitted it some time ago. It's gone now to the people in Western Newfoundland and Municipal Affairs. It's been vetting. All of the necessary paperwork has been filed, and we're waiting now to see where the province is going to come down on this issue when the budget gets dropped within the next week or so, and what the percentages will be. Because it's very important to council, of course, whether you get a 50-50 sharing on these projects or whether you can get a more advantageous split like a 70-30. The government were suggesting first that the feds would put in 1/3, and of the 2/3 that were remaining, the province wanted to split that 50-50 between the town and the province. We're looking for a more favorable split than that, so I'll be meeting with Minister Denine in that regard in the next few days, and when I get back to St. John's on the House again, and the budgets have actually been dropped. John Grant and his committee have been fantastic on that. They've got their information and their work done. Blaine at the town council and the town council's got their work done. So it's a matter now of let's see where the province is going to go with this and get the best deal that we can get for it. The other issue would be waste disposal. I'm not sure if the Mayor Reid or Council has given the people an update yet. All councils in Burgeo-Lapoil District, in fact all over this province, were given a letter some time ago, within the last month or so, from the Department of Environment saying that all of these teepees, garbage incinerators, have to be closed by December 31st.
Of this year?
Of this year, 2008. Now that is a massive, massive directive, and it's a massive problem because no options have been provided. The Department of Environment and the Department of Municipal Affairs talks about a new waste disposal proposal or program, but it's not in place. And before they got the option figured out as to what you're going to do with your garbage, they've told everybody to shut down their teepees. Now, different communities have different problems. For example, they're talking about trucking everybody's waste to in around the Bay of Islands. Wild Cove actually has been identified. So everybody from the Bay of Islands, Corner Brook, Deer Lake, Pasadena, Stephenville, Port-au-Port, Port-aux-Basques, Rose Blanche, Burgeo, Grey River, Francois, Ramia, everywhere under the proposed plan would truck their garbage into Wild Cove in the Bay of Islands. Now, that's a very complex situation. It's a very costly situation. You have to have, for example, Grey River finds himself in a situation where, what would they do? Do they put a dumpster on the wharf, keep their garbage, and ship it up every so often and put it in with Burgeo's and then ship it all off to Wild Cove? What does Ramia do? Ramia, only 2 years ago, was given a brand new teepee at $210,000, paid for by the provincial government, a new teepee, and now they're told to shut it down at the end of this year. So the cost of putting this new system in place, nobody knows for sure what the cost will be. Nobody knows how you're going to get the garbage into Wild Cove, and here's the Department of Environment putting out this directive to close. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of talk still needed. All the councils in southwestern Newfoundland have had preliminary meetings on it. There's still no answers to date. But of course this is very important because this is going to impact upon each and every resident and householder. At the end of the day, if there's a cost associated with this, it gets passed on to the household. So the question is, what is that cost going to be so that the householders know what that cost is and what ways should it be passed on to the householder? And that's the big issue, is can we go longer using the teepees? Or if government is insisting that this be done so we get rid of the environmental impacts of the teepees, is government going to fund this? Is government going to subsidize this? Otherwise, if not, councils and local service districts are left to download this cost on their citizens. So it's a very complex issue. It's hot and heavy right now in every LSD and council on the coast. And quite frankly, nobody is telling these councils what their options are, what their costs are, and what the funding is going to be. So as we move on in the next 4 or 5, 6 months, that's going to become a hot and heavy issue that's going to require a lot of input. So I'm sure the council's given you an update so far, but that's where we're headed with this. So you'll hear a lot of talk about waste disposal in the next few months.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty well an update on where we stand on all these issues. If you have any particular questions, by all means,
No, I don't
feel
have no
free to
questions.
shoot.
I think you covered mostly pretty good.
Okay.
When do you expect your next visit?
The house, as I say, is open for April and May. I'm due to come back. There's a graduation on that I'll certainly be back for and committed to for the high school graduation.
Yes.
I believe that's on the 9th of May,
Yes.
Which is a Friday. So the plan is to fly out that Friday, do the graduation. So, of course, anybody who needs to see me, I'll be here for that evening in particular. And, of course, my office is always accessible. Most people hang on to their Christmas cards that I send them because they also have my contact information and
Yes.
phone there. And Joanne Clark, of course, who works with me in the office in Port aux Basques, is always available. Anybody who calls, there's an answering machine. If she happens to be out for a moment or if it happens to be after hours, no problem. Just leave your name and your number, and then we pride ourselves on getting back to people. If there's one thing we do is we return our phone calls, and if we don't, you let us know that we don't. So, because that's the idea, and that's the whole purpose of being involved in this.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you for coming by.
No problem, anytime.
This week's video is one done by Route 480 called Our Little Town.
Takes a little time, but soon you will see we got in their dreams. Say there's nothing here, or so it seems. And they will miss it, someday they'll know. They'll want to return to the town they love so. Our town, our little town, this is our town, our little town. One day it's up, the next day it's down. This is our town, our little town.
This concludes our programming for tonight. Thank you for watching. Good night.